Buongiorno e benvenuti a tutti. Good morning and welcome to you all. My name is Dr. Ian Ralby, and it is my absolute honor and privilege to be your moderator this morning. You'll be hearing from me in just a few moments, but before I say anything further, it's my great pleasure to get to introduce to the stage our two key dignitaries this morning, Admiral Natale, the Chief of the Italian Navy's Education Command, and Vice Minister Valentini, the Vice Minister for Enterprise and Made in Italy. So, Admiral Natale, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. It's a privilege and honor to be here today in the Italian village near the Amerigo Vespucci, the most beautiful ship in the world, as we say here in Los Angeles. Certainly one of the most beautiful cities in the west coast of the United States. As he tells, I'm the Rear Admiral Antonio Natale. I would like, first of all, to greet the Deputy Minister of Enterprise and Made in Italy, Mr. Valentino Valentini. That is an honor to have him here in this stage. I want to greet even the Admiral Credendino, the Italian CNO. He's a little bit busy right now with the press, but he's going to join us briefly. So, I'm sure there will be a very interesting discussion, thanks also to the high qualified speaker who we'll have on the stage in a few minutes. Yeah, I have to. Okay, this is a blue centenary, as we used to say, and the entire maritime cluster does not want to miss this opportunity for growth. The sea is always influencing human activities, and the evidence of this is in this slide, that you can see that more than 80% of population lives within 200 kilometers from the coast. So I see that is not made to divide, but is a bridge between countries. The Navy, that is a part of the maritime cluster, must also their part by ensuring free navigation and safety at sea, but also under the sea, ensuring control of critical infrastructure on the sea, such as oil platform, for instance, and also underwater cables and pipeline, where energy and information ensure to daily life of the mankind. You know, a few years ago, just with what's happened in the Nord Stream Gulf, the Nord Stream, so rise up all the attention. Really, the Italian Navy was already doing this activity in protection infrastructure at sea. So now we are more involved in these activities, and so we are doing a lot of this. Amerigo Vespucci is our floating embassy, but also we are doing some international operations, such as anti-piracy, that we are doing in the Horn of Africa and the Gulf of Guinea. With the Operation Aspides, we are ensure the free of navigation in the south of the Red Sea. And with the ship, we are involved in the RIMPAC, that is the biggest exercise, maritime exercise in the world, that we will held here in the Pacific Ocean. We are involved even in some trials with few countries at the range in Hawaii for BMD, Ballistic Missile Defense Training. So we are really focused on this activity, just to ensure, as I told you, the freedom of navigation. And moreover, we have an aircraft carrier group, always right now in the Pacific, in addition to the normal operation that the navies carry out in the Mediterranean. For the underwater, as I see in the slide, I want to see that the Italian Navy, after the event, create a kind of hub, or we could say a think tank in La Spezia, that we join with the industry, is led by the Navy. then there is the industry, and there are the universities. So we are grow up in this specific field. We try to call a kind of new dimension, the underwater dimension. Is the other country, usually even the NATO and the European Union, is doing a part of the maritime. So, but nevertheless, I mean, we are pushing on this activity that is very important for us. Finally, I want to underline another threat that the Italian Navy is facing in the cybersecurity, to increase our ship safety in order to operate always in any condition. Obviously, it's a very sensitive topic, and it should be carried out normally by a national company. And the Italian Navy is doing it as well, as we see later, one of the briefer, one of the speakers, with the Italian industry that is called DEAS. Last but not least, at the end, I think is one of the topics that we have to carry out, is the blue economy. There is just to understand that normally is a real multiplier of investment by a factor of 2, this is generally speaking, for the rest of the economy. Focus on Italy right now, Italy should be, have a very vocation in at sea, because we are we are surrounded by the sea. So the impact is almost 25% on the Italian gross domestic product. So that's very important activities that's why we have to focus and talk about this. So now let's start with the rest of the briefer. Thank you for your attention, and I hope it will be a very good and nice distraction at the end. Thank you.
Sometimes I tend to be over efficient and skip orders. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me here. Everybody's saying that it's an honor to have me. I have to say it's an honor for me to be here. And it's the first time that I take the floor officially, and that gives me the opportunity to thank everybody, to thank the Italian Navy, to thank you all for the excellent job you're doing. Coming over here, flying all these hours to come and see the Vespucci and the way you set up the village. It's a great pride, and I think really you're up on the par. The Vespucci is the best ship we said on the sea. You're probably the best crew that the Vespucci can have. So thank you very much for your job, guys. But let me start with a different note. See, the opportunity you have when you come to this side of the Atlantic, that you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you do the things they tell you to do in books, get up early and be effective. So I started to think about the things you were going to say. And the first thing that struck to my mind is most of the people think that the blue economy is just a derivative of the green economy. You got the green economy, then you have a subsector, which is the blue economy. It's blue because it's the sea, etc. Well, it's not really that. And the first thing I'd like to reflect with you is that the term blue economy, well, first of all, blue economy was theorized 10, 15 years ago. It's not new. It's not something that's been there all the time. Whereas green, we all heard about green. Blue is new. And there's a guy behind all this. It's a Belgian economist. It's not very popular, but his name is Gunther Pauli. And Gunther Pauli published the first books about the blue economy. And what is the point about the blue economy, and what's the difference between the green and the blue? Obviously, they're close, but they're not similar. Gunther Pauli said, we have to look at the way nature functions. We have to look at the fact that nature uses someone's waste as its raw material. So he said, the way to approach the blue economy is that of biomimicking, copying nature, the way that nature works. And that's practically the basis of what we want to do. It's not just a point of throwing money and investment at the sea, but it's rather to do things differently and understand the deep and complex interactions between the oceans and what stands around the oceans. So my point today would be, if we would take the ocean not as a resource, but rather if we take the ocean as an infrastructure, then things will be quite different. It's probably the largest infrastructure we were given. 90% of world Trade takes place on this infrastructure. It takes care not just of that, it's a fantastic source of food for the humanity, and it's probably the best air conditioning and biological system for climate regulator. On top of that, as we've seen, it also now protects the security system, the arteries that connect the internet and our secure communications. So if we consider the ocean as being an infrastructure, we realize that the oceans is part of every value chain, and every value chain is affected what happens in the ocean. And I would come to you to one of the points that probably not the sport has to do with the environment, it has to do with the way that things are interconnected. You're probably aware that we have this phenomenon called the seaweed blooming, the Sargassian algae. There's some 5.5 million cubic meters of floating algae in the oceans. And if they end up, let's say, on the coast of Florida, all of a sudden, all of our tourism is over, and those algae, that blooming, is provoked by agriculture around the world and all the phosphates that end up in the world. To tell you how the system is so complex and how we have this system that, as I said, is also the heating system of the planet. And when that heating system is broken, we've used it. You sailors, you always say, buon vento in Italian. Now I have good winds, and the trade winds were those that allowed trade in the past. Now those same trade winds allow the cooling of our planet. Well, what happens when the temperature goes up? We've seen all the effects that we have on migrations. We've seen people, because there's no food, there's no security, because on the coastline doesn't work. Then we have floods of people going up the Americas, lots of people going up to Africa, coming to our countries, provoking some of the greatest social, economic problems we have to face with. And this is all connected to that infrastructure I was talking about. It's connected to the oceans, it's connected to this blue. So blue is not just another color, a code color that you gave, but rather is understanding how complex and how important is the interaction we have, and how we have to change the way we approach the situation. Of course, there's another element to this. I'm from the Ministry of Enterprises and Made in Italy, but I should not be concealing you the fact that also there's a security element, very much important, connected to the sea, more so than at any time problem in history. And we see now what happens when we have this problem on the sea with the Suez Canal choking off 40% of trade that comes to Italy. All of a sudden, the infrastructure, the oceans become a place where conflict takes place, rather than the meeting of people and the trading of goods around it. If then we are not able to perform our role militarily and economically, we're going to disrupt this fantastic infrastructure that we were given. And I think that's probably one of the ways we have to look at it. In Italy, we realized that, so much so that the Council of Ministry created a special department for the maritime policies. It has to coordinate all the ministries because, as I said, it's so complex that no single approach will be successful. Not the economic, not the military, not the infrastructure, not the investment. You cannot throw money at the sea. You have to do it differently. Secondly, we also have, we're going to pass a couple of laws, one about what we call the blue economy as well, and the other one concerning the underwater activities. 80% of all living beings are under the ocean, are in the ocean. So we have that. All of the secure communication pass under the ocean nowadays, so the internet is down there mostly, and we know what it means when somebody accidentally seems to be cutting off a cable or two. Thirdly, we also have the development of those areas, because we're now looking at, we're all going to space. We probably know more about space, probably coming from LA and having visited yesterday SpaceX. You know, there's people here who's very much interested into that, but we know much less about what happens under the sea, so there's been great development, and certainly we're looking for raw materials that are becoming critical because, as you know, in terms of hoarding of raw materials on the part of certain countries, in terms of a shift in the use of raw materials, we come across the need to find new sources of raw materials. So to make a long story short, in 2050, someone says that the coral reef of the oceans, all of coral reefs of the oceans will disappear. That means that 25% of all life will disappear because this because of acidification and of heating up of the temperature in the water. And if you go down, sometimes I have the opportunity to go diving, and I can see, you see a year after the other, how it tends to dry up. You don't know what to do. But that would be, and I will say that to the Italians, it would be as if we would take the Mose, as a mobile dam that we created to protect Venice. The Venice Lagoon, we have a mobile dam that goes up and prevents the waves from eating up Venice. Well, the coral reefs perform the same things to all the coasts of the water. So in 2050, if things continue that way, the giant protection that we have on the coastal areas of the world will be taken away. And that's why we hear again, the environmental situation is such, I always look at it in a tri-dimensional way. It has two dimensions. One is north-south. The north of the world, you know how we call the north and south of the world, the rich part of the world and the poor part of the world. The rich part of the world, the north, having used all the resources and taken away from the poorer countries of the world and created these imbalances. But at the same time, it goes through time. It's us taking away from our children the opportunity to have the same development, to have the prosperity we had, because we're destroying the environment. We're taking opportunities away from them. So we travel through time and we travel through space, north-south. Well, the Vespucci somewhat comes from time, comes from the past, with a message for the future. The Vespucci travel this axis of time to tell us, listen, we have to change the way we perform. We were the tallest and biggest ship at the time. We want future generations to have the same opportunity. So the point is being here together and being in a place where, again, yesterday we talked about ships. This time is a starship. So again, the image of the ship, the image of travel, the image of exploring and being able to travel in the world, to have a safe world, to be all together and interconnected. And I think it's a message we're giving here. And I'm very glad that then after me, experts will be debating all of the complex aspects of this blue economy, which I hope I've convinced you, is something more. It's not just a subdivision of the green economy, but it's something, if ever possible, more complex and more important. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm not sure we could have benefited from better speeches to open this discussion. Admiral Natale, you have touched on so many of the points that I hope will come out through the day. And Vice Minister Valentini, I think you have just given one of the best discussions I've actually ever heard on the importance of the blue economy. And I say that having spent a lot of my last few years hearing nothing but speeches about the blue economy. So that is really a fantastic introduction. So let me add a few remarks to continue to frame this discussion and then turn over to our expert panel. You've already heard referenced some of the statistics we often use to describe the importance of the maritime domain to our life on land. We say 70% of the Earth is covered in water. We say 20% of all dietary protein comes from fish. We say that 80% of the entire world's population lives within 100 miles of the coast. And we say that 90% of world trade happens by sea. In other words, no fish, no food, no shipping, no shopping. And one of the statistics I wanted to highlight that was mentioned and is very much an important theme to the Italian Navy as we go towards the Sea Power Symposium later this year is that 99% of communication at this point happens through our submarine cables. So no cables, no communication. That also means no cash. You can't go to an ATM or a cash point and take out cash with these cables. And if you think they are massive infrastructure, let me disavow you of that notion. I'm holding a piece of an actual submarine cable. This garden hose resting on the ocean floor is critical to our way of life on land. And if we forget that nexus between what is happening and what is on and beneath the sea, we forget how integral our world is and its connection to the maritime domain. And so there's another statistic I want us all to remember today, which is that 100% of people live on land. And despite the sort of oddity of that, I think that's really important to note as we talk about the nexus between the development of the maritime space and the blue economy, the governance of that massive maritime domain, and the need to secure it. And security comes in two forms. It comes in the form of securing against bad actors, pirates, traffickers, smugglers, thieves, terrorists, and other bad actors, be they state or non-state. But it also means securing it against the changes that are occurring and upending our way of life. As we look at most of this country today under extreme heat advisories, as we look at all kinds of changes in both seawater rise and level and temperature. The world is changing, and we have to be prepared to deal with the consequences of that and be agile in how we develop. Most of us, unfortunately, are very sea blind. We do not pay attention to the maritime domain. We do not recognize how important that maritime space is to our life on land. Even if we look in our closet and see made in Indonesia, made in Taiwan, made in Chile, in all of our clothes, we don't think that that term, I will get there, made in Italy, very important, but I was going to get there. I think that we forget that no matter where it is made, most of the items that we use in our day-to-day basis have come by boat. Maybe on 2 or 3 or 4 or even 5 different ships from different parts of the world, because the components are assembled in one place but created in lots of different ones. We don't think in those terms. We don't think about the fact that if I send out a WhatsApp message to everyone in this room, I'm reliant on a garden hose sitting on the ocean floor in order to make that happen. We don't think that when we go to have lunch, that fish has not only been caught off a boat, but traveled by boat to get here. And we forget just how integral our life is in terms of its connection to the maritime domain. And so that nexus between security, governance, and development in the maritime space is incredibly important. And sometimes we're reminded of it. The Ever Given gets stuck in the Suez Canal for 6 days. It costs the shipping industry $416 million per hour for those 6 days. We see shortages of fuel in different places. We see goods not getting to where they need to go. Then we see a blast in Beirut that is a cargo from 2013 that nevertheless had been sitting there for 7 years until it blew up and took the lives of hundreds, destroyed the homes of thousands, and harmed the nation to the tune of about $16 billion. These impacts of the maritime domain are being felt. We've seen them this year with the Houthis essentially closing the Red Sea to travel, with climate change causing the low water levels in the Panama Canal to put further strain on the shipping industry. And despite all of these strategic shocks in our global supply chains that make us feel how connected we are to the maritime domain, we have short memories. We forget. A few months go by, we'll not remember it. It's not a big deal. It will happen. And so I want to introduce a term that I hope will help us with today, which is that we are not only sea blind, we are wealth blind to the maritime domain. And wealth blindness comes in 2 forms. In the first, I could hand you a bucket of gold, and I could say, you can't weigh it, you can't look up the price of gold, go sell it, get the best price you can. And you go off, you sell it, you come back to me, and you say, I got 100,000 US dollars for that bucket of gold. And I could say, that's wonderful, that's a lot of money, you can keep it. But that bucket of gold was worth $1 million. You didn't know how much you had or how much it was worth, and so you sold yourself 90% short. That is essentially what we are doing with maritime resources all over the world today. We don't understand how valuable the maritime domain is, so we don't respect it, and we don't cherish it, and we don't get the value out of it that we could. But there's a second bucket. This time I hand you a bucket of clay, and I say the exact same thing. You can't weigh it, you can't look up the price of clay, go sell it and get the best price you can. And you come back to me and you say, I got $100 for that bucket of clay. I can say, that's actually amazing. It was only worth $50. But don't you have a friend who's a potter? Don't you have a friend who's a sculptor? Couldn't she have made bowls out of it that sold for $100 each? Couldn't you have had your sculptor friend make some kind of sculpture that sold for $1,000 or thousands of dollars? Couldn't you have added value to what you had? And that wealth blindness in terms of how we can take the resources we have, innovate, and add value to them is also hampering us in our development of the maritime domain. It was almost exactly 24 years ago today that I set set foot first time on the Amerigo Vespucci. It was in the port of Baltimore, my hometown, in Opsail 2000. And that day changed my life. That day was what my family calls our Independence Day. We had a fantastic day together because we all were freed from different things that day, and we all ended up moving in different directions. And my career has moved squarely into the maritime space ever since. That day inspired me. The beauty of Amerigo Vespucci and the sister ships that were sailing in through Baltimore gave me a new view of the world, a new view of how I could spend my life, and a new view of what I wanted to do. And so it's a great pleasure and honor to be here in the presence of that inspiration, to share with you that message that we need to work to inspire ourselves and inspire each other, and importantly, inspire the youth to overcome our wealth blindness, overcome our sea blindness, and innovate as much as we can. And innovation comes in two forms. We need to take what we have and improve it. We need to innovate on existing infrastructure, existing structures, existing technology, and make it better. And we also have to find new ways of doing things, new ways of harnessing the great value the maritime domain can afford to us. And I hope that not only in our discussions today we will have that inspiration, but in the presence of Amerigo Vespucci and its incredible diplomatic voyage around the world, that we will find new inspiration to tackle the increasing challenges that we face around the world. So I will now turn over to some of my co-panelists and welcome their remarks and look for that inspiration as we continue to discuss the blue economy, how to secure it, and how to develop it. It is my great pleasure to introduce our first panelist, Admiral Jamie Fogo. Admiral Fogo and I have gotten to know each other over the last 10 years, and I look forward very much to his remarks. But I first met him when he was a very young three-star admiral, before taking over at Allied Joint Forces Command in Naples. And I remember years back spending time with him at his villa in Naples and enjoying both the beauty of Italy, many things made in Italy, and certainly the cherished friendship that the United States and Italy have. And so it's a great pleasure and honor to get to welcome him to the stage first. So Admiral Fogo, the floor is yours.
Thanks, my friend. Signore e signori, buongiorno. Che bella giornata, huh? Yeah. It's a great pleasure for me to be here with you today next to the Italian tall ship Amerigo Vespucci in the port of Los Angeles, our biggest port on the west coast of the United States and arguably our biggest port in our maritime industry. While the ship was sailing the seas in 1962 in the Mediterranean, an American aircraft carrier, the USS Independence, flashed a flashing light signal to Amerigo Vespucci, asking, "Who are you?" The full-rig ship answered, "Training ship Amerigo Vespucci, Italian Navy." The commanding officer of the Independence said, "You are the most beautiful ship in the world, and this is a fact, made in Italy, sir." Today, I'm wearing my Amerigo Vespucci watch with pride. I talked to the midshipmen about that. And the cloisonnier of a commendatore of the Italian Republic, given to me by President Mattarella, something that I wear with honor, something that I wear with dignity, and something I wear with deep humility. I am so grateful. Thank you. When we talk about made in Italy, how many of you have flown through LaGuardia Airport in New York City? Many hands go up. So one of my favorite American politicians, sir, New York City was made in Italy. Fiorello LaGuardia was the mayor of New York City, but before he became the mayor, he was a junior politician, and he gave it all up in World War I to put on an army uniform, go to Italy, and train Italian aviators in Foggia, which became very important in my life during the Libya campaign later on. That's where the KAOC was. But he did it because that's what friends do for other friends. And speaking of friends, I have many friends here today. I can't name them all, but it is so good to see Admiral Vitale again. So good to see Admiral Nannini, who's running the hydrographia for the Italian Navy. And of course, my friend, Admiral Enrico Credendino, who I've known since 2008, almost 17 years. We were captains together. We were both executive assistants to our respective chiefs of defense. He worked for General Vincenzo Camparini, an Air Force officer, Italian Chad. I worked for Admiral Mike Mullen, our Chad. We ran into each other all over the world, I think one time even in Australia. And it was always a pleasure to see Enrico. And so when we talk about the blue economy, I think we have to talk about security first. And security comes with a strong and powerful Navy, which the Italian Navy is demonstrating here by their presence today, and I'll talk a little bit more about the Cavour in a minute. So when I became the Sixth Fleet Commander, as Dr. Ralby mentioned, I was delighted to find out that Admiral Credendino was commander of the EU Operation Sophia. EU. The United States is not a member of the EU, but I said, we want to help. We want to do something, and we participated in his shared awareness and deconfliction conferences in Rome to help him deconflict the battle space, which was the Mediterranean. And of course, to try to reduce the risk to migrants, desperate people spending their life savings coming up from Africa and into primarily Lampedusa and crowding Europe with a burden that it could not afford. He did a wonderful job. During this time, we did more than just shade. I remember a conference in Italy when Admiral De Giorgi, who was a predecessor of Admiral Credendino as the Italian CNO, came to the conference. And during a coffee break, he said to me, "Fogo." Yes, sir. "Do you have a ship in the Eastern Mediterranean?" "Yes, sir, I do. The USS Simpson. I'm very proud of that ship. It's a frigate." He said, "I need your help." You see, after the Libya campaign, Libya was fractured in two, and there were jets taking off from Benghazi and Tripoli. These were military jets, supersonic speed, and they were doing training runs on EU Operation Sophia. The Admiral would get phone calls in the middle of the night. "What do you want us to do? These things are coming at us. We don't know what their intention is." Very dangerous. So the Italians had their finger on a hair trigger. Admiral De Giorgi asked, "Can you have the American ship link through a connector called Link 16 to extend our air picture to the other side of the Mediterranean? It will give us more time to make a decision. It will give us space so that we don't make the wrong decision." He didn't want to shoot any airplanes down that were doing stupid things. And so I said, of course. So I sent the USS Simpson over, and they linked with the Italian ship, and the rest was history. That's what friends do. Now, before I left that job, Admiral Credendino gave me this great book, Fighting the Smugglers to Protect Human Life. Sophia was more than just about preventing migrants from coming ashore. It was about safety of life at sea. It was about the blue economy. You cannot have a successful blue economy when you have traffickers in human life, traffickers in narcotics, and traffickers in illegal weapons running all over the Mediterranean. So these were ancillary issues for Sophia to overcome, and he did a wonderful job. This book was about Sophia, and it is inscribed back then by your CNO. It rests in my library in Washington, D.C., at the Center for Maritime Strategy, and people that come in all want to look at it because it's a humanitarian mission made in Italy, and it saved lives. So thank you, sir, for that magnificent job. Now, during my time in Europe, Italy was also a great host nation. We enjoy bases in Gaeta, Naples, and Sigonella, the headquarters of our Marine patrol aircraft, which are running around the Mediterranean providing intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, not just to Americans, but also to our allies and to our Italian allies. The headquarters at Joint Forces Command Naples in Lago Patria was state-of-the-art, spectacular. I was there for 3 years, and I had great Italian people helping me. My chief of staff, there has never been a better chief of staff at JFC Naples than General Luciano Portolano, a favorite of President Mattarella, one who helped save Italy from the COVID crisis, no doubt about it. So for those of you going back to Rome, who's going back to Rome? I saw a bunch of Romans here earlier. Dica ciao Luciano from Fogo. You tell him you saw me and I said hello. And my time in Italy convinced me that we have many common interests. Admiral Credendino invited me to Rome in November of last year to participate in the Downside Up conference. Ask him about it. It's an incredibly clever name that underscores the importance of the undersea domain. I'm a submariner. I believe in that. And this domain presents risk and opportunity, particularly in the area that Dr. Ralby called critical undersea infrastructure, cables and pipelines, some of which have been cut or disrupted in the last couple of years. Harvesting seabed minerals, the Convention on Law of the Sea, and undersea unmanned vehicles and submarines. They're everywhere. Enrico, I don't know that you've seen this, but I recently published an article in Italian in Air Press and Industria about the critical undersea infrastructure, and the inspiration for that was your conference. Thank you, sir. Now, I'm also a senior NATO mentor, so I work with the Alliance. I'll be back in Naples at the end of this month talking to the submariners. And I participated in Strike Force NATO, my old headquarters in Lisbon, their exercise called Neptune Strike 2024. It's a peacetime vigilance exercise. When the U.S. aircraft carrier, like Independence, the USS Eisenhower, left the Mediterranean after a 9-month deployment, they were extended for 2 months, NATO showed up in force to send them off and to take their place. So we had the French ship, the carrier Charles de Gaulle, the Spanish carrier SPS Juan Carlos, the amphibious assault ship, the Turkish ship TCG Anadolu, brand new, a phenomenal ship, USS Wasp coming from the east coast of the United States, and the Italian aircraft carrier Cavour, complete with F-35s embarked. It was a spectacular show of presence to secure the blue economy, and I congratulate you, sir. It didn't stop there. Cavour went back home, she refitted, and started her deployment to the Pacific. So this showing of force, beginning with Amerigo Vespucci in Los Angeles, is only the start. Cavour is here. I guess I can say she's somewhere close to Darwin, Australia. She's already in theater, and she is helping the United States to help our partners and allies against aggression of countries like the People's Republic of China. And you can read about that in the newspapers. So that's what friends are for. And I thank you for that in helping to secure the blue economies, not just of Europe and the Mediterranean, but also the Pacific. You are a world-class Navy. Now, finally, I want to thank Italy, and in particular, the city of Bella Napoli, where I lived for 7 years, for its love of sport. Football brought Americans, and it's soccer here, but it's football there, so I use the European term. Football brought Americans and Italians together. I enjoyed watching Italian football, and I'm a big fan. So where are my midshipmen from Napoli? Anybody from Napoli, stand up. I want you to join me in sending a message of solidarity back to Italy, back to the people of Napoli, and I want to say, Forza Napoli. I hope my team wins. You guys make it happen. Grazie mille. Thank you.
Admiral Fogo, thank you very much for those inspiring remarks. And if anybody's following, I believe we're in extra time in the Switzerland-England match. So just giving that update, it's 1-1. But it is now my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Lino Buono, who is the Chief Technology Officer at one of the leading cybersecurity firms. And he's going to talk to us about cyber intelligence in the maritime domain, a critically important topic which has already been touched on, and I look forward to hearing more. Mr. Buono.
So, good morning, everybody. First of all, let me thank the Italian Ministry of Defense, Italian Navy, and the local authorities for having me here today in this awesome event. My name is Lino Buono. I'm the technical director of DEAS, an Italian company mainly involved in cybersecurity and AI. So, actually, I'm the panelist with the lower knowledge about the maritime today. I'm much better in surfing the web respect than the sea. Actually, I tried once to surf, but the results were not so good. I need to retry. But anyway, how an hacker like me, how a cybersecurity expert can be useful for a discussion on blue economy? Well, The cyberspace is usually defined as the fifth domain of battlefield. But someone referred to it as a sort of super domain that surround all the other domains. Someone else talked about embedded domain because it's inside all the other domains. In my opinion, it's better to talk about a sort of transcendent domain because cyberspace exists on its own and is made by digitalized information, but it even intersects and influences a lot all the other domains. So basically, today I want to try to leverage on my hackerish background and bring a different point of view and talk about for the next 20 minutes on the importance of cyber intelligence for the maritime ecosystem. So, there's no prosperity without security. I strongly agree with this statement, and it becomes quite evident if we think of what is happening in the Red Sea area. So, the lack of security and the lack of sense of security over there has a direct impact on economy. And everyone knows that many ships, since the last October, from the beginning of the conflict, started to abandon the usual and the short path through the Red Sea and the Suez Channel, and move to the old one, the longest but safer trip rounding the Cape of Good Hope. And so basically, many ships accepted the fact that there is an economical impact, but without accepting the risk of having a safety problem. Okay, so but how much the route changes? So that much. This was the situation in October 2023, and this one was the situation in January of this year. So we had a drastic decrease of the number of ships and then the amount of goods moving through the Suez Channel, and we have a specular balance of the increase of the ships moving through the Cape of Good Hope. That's quite normal. And so we really good understand that there's no prosperity without security, but I think that we can and we must make a step further. And thinking that it's not possible to protect something that you don't know from a threat you don't understand. So basically, we can say that there's no security without knowledge. And basically, that is one of the key messages that Sun Tzu wrote in The Art of the War. So if you know the enemy and you know yourself, you need to not fear the results of 100 battles. And looks like pretty obvious maybe to nowadays, but 2,500 years later, we still fail in applying this in practice. And in cyberspace, this is really evident because every day, many companies all around the world, small company, big company, public, private, are hit by effective cyber attacks. And from my experience, most of the time, during the incident investigation, it results that many of the computers and servers involved in the cyber incident were unknown, or that everybody knows in the organization that those assets didn't exist anymore since 2 years ago. So why this happened? Basically, the root causes are complexity and the rapidity in changes. The world nowadays is extremely complex, and the changes continuously change and changes rapidly. So basically, in order to have an adequate situational awareness, you need to deal with the huge amount of data, and you need to deal with that in extremely fast manner, because otherwise they change. So it's not so easy to do it. And the situation is even worse, because data in cyberspace are often polluted nowadays. And pollution in cyberspace is not as evident in the sea, because, or at least, it's not like spotting a plastic bottle in the sea that is quite evident, quite easy, but it's more like chemical pollutants that are invisible to human eyes, but still is a big threat. So, luckily, the technology here can help us a lot because there is the possibility, in the same way humans created the instruments to analyze water and identify the chemical pollutants invisible to human eyes, is possible to use technology to deal with the huge amount of data and extract useful information from that. And the main character here is AI, for sure. So basically, AI can provide superhuman capabilities in deal with the tons of data and to extract actionable intelligence. And so in DEAS, we invest a lot in AI and innovation in general. And what we did is to put together our R&D and the expertise coming from our OSINT and SOCMINT expert to create an instrument called Orion. Orion is meant to be a sort of, let's say, medical center where you can find in a single place an equipe of different subject matter experts all together to solve your problem. And this equipe is made of virtual personnel, basically, but looks like really human, as you can see. And probably they are more human than many humans out there, especially in some medical center, let's say. But anyway, so we tried to use Orion to get some information about the Red Sea conflict and start from zero knowledge about the topic and see what happened. So.
Hello, everybody. I'm Astra, the intelligence analyst that will take you into the Orion's world. I'm specialized in open source intelligence, and my sources are mainly web and GPT. But here in Orion, I'm surrounded by an equipe of subject matter experts that will expand the perimeter of the investigation. Each expert can count on different data sources and specialized search engines. You can start your investigation with a simple chat, by typing or even talking to me.
Astra analyzes the request and select the most fitting engines to answer the question. Astra identified a group of rebels currently active in the Red Sea area. They looks like the most important threat for the maritime traffic over there. I want to know more. It seems that drones are one of the main tools in the hands of Houthis. We must investigate. Behind the scenes, Orion automatically creates a graph following the steps of the investigation. At the same time, Orion extracts and catalogs relevant entities from the answers. Now that we know which kind of drones are used to threaten ships in the Red Sea, we can try to get detailed information about them. Let's start with Shahed.
Lino, I'm sorry, but web and GPT are insufficient to properly answer to your last question. I propose you to talk to our expert in social media intelligence.
Here we are. Let me check what I can find about this topic on social networks.
Depending on the typology of the entity, it's possible to explicitly run a set of engines directly from the graph. What a huge amount of juicy info. Telegram was a cave full of details on these drones. Among the rest, I now know even the manufacturer. Could be interesting to know who is working there. Awesome. We now have a bunch of people working for the target company. Maybe some of them are directly involved in Shahed building project. Let's see if one of them is working in the R&D. Got him. I want to see if we can find something more about him. Here we are. Looks like he even worked for the Army. Good to know. Drones building is a complex project. Maybe there are other stakeholders involved. Let's find it out. Looks like the manufacturer has multiple subsidiaries. I must discover more about the degree of their involvement. From now on, I can find everything about their presence online thanks to our cyber profiler. Let's start with the first one. Cyber Profiler runs tens of engines to replicate the info gathering activities made by hackers in the beginning of an assessment, getting in minutes the entire cyber exposure of an organization. Wow, there are a lot of data to inspect. Looks like they even have many IPs, domains, services, and even some known vulnerabilities on the perimeter. Well, I think that's enough for today. Thanks, Astra. Thanks, Orion.
See you next time, Lino. Me and my team are here to help you.
Okay, and there we are. So basically, we were able in minutes, in little time, to move from knowing nothing about the topic to have actionable intelligence about the topic. So detailed and in-depth information that can directly be used. Okay? So this was possible thanks to our instrument that basically was meant to provide the intelligence operator a simple user experience similar to the one put in place at GPT, but providing much more power thanks to the other more than 50 engine. And the other stuff is to provide control in the origin of the data. From the intelligence investigation, having knowledge about from where the information comes from is essential in the polluted world. Okay? So, moreover, if we try today to perform the same investigation, probably we receive slightly different results because the data are get and analyzed in real time. Okay, so right now we made half of the job because now we have a way to understand the threat, understand the enemy. But now we want to know more about ourselves. So we can do it using the same approach, of course, and for example, ask to Orion to investigate about us and identify information, general information, sensitive information that could be leaked on dark web, information about the personnel, other stakeholders, and so on, and even eventually have a full report on cyber exposure of the organization. But talking about ourselves, we can perform a step further. And we can move from a passive information gathering to having an active approach and look at ourselves with the eyes of an attacker. And we can use an approach that is called adversary emulation. Adversary emulation is not a novel approach in cyber because many mature organizations used to perform pen testing, red teaming exercises against their system. But I think that we can enhance and enlarge this approach in order to understand the overall security posture of the organization to protect. I mean, if we are thinking about a complex environment, complex stuff like maritime traffic, is extremely insufficient to just concentrate on finding vulnerabilities that can lead to threats like ransomware and stuff like that. Because the risk is much more bigger, okay? And we need to have an holistic approach and identify other kind of threats that are not so common. So basically, we have the, here is where the cyberspace reveals its transcendence. Because with the eye of the attacker, yes, the cyberspace is for sure the source of information and the natural playground, but is much more. Cyberspace could be even the medium for the attacker, for the advanced attacker, to have kinetic physical impact, but performing the attack from remote thanks to a computer activity. That's the real wet dream of the advanced attacker in cyberspace. And looks like a bit sci-fi, I know, but in the last month, we have the pleasure and the honor to participate in a complex exercise made by Italian Navy, the Kyrenex experience, and where we were involved exactly to understand if this kind of attack were feasible. And what we did is to demonstrate that from remote it was possible to gain enough knowledge to design a cyber attack that through the involvement of an insider threat or by compromising the supply chain, we were able to carry on an attack, a double of attack actually, one of the cognitive attack against the personnel of the ship, and so through the workstation. And on the other end, we were able to perform the kinetic attack, so to have physical impact. We were able to demonstrate the possibility to block the ship's rudder and to turn off the diesel engine, given some capability. So this is not just sci-fi. This is something that an advanced attacker could do. And this experience was a great opportunity to really realize what an hostile entity can do against us. So this was exactly the holistic approach, the complete overall approach that we need to apply in order to really protect a complex environment. So this was just a piece of the complete picture, but I hope that was enough to pass the concept. Okay? So thank you very much for your attention.
Mr. Buono, thank you for that informative, interesting, and in some ways terrifying presentation. None of us will sleep well tonight. I want to next introduce Mr. Marco Galbiati, who in 2018 was appointed to be the representative of Fincantieri USA until he took over as CEO in 2022. Now, I want to emphasize, if anyone has not heard of Fincantieri, that this is quintessential made in Italy, and it is a really fantastic organization. It is one of the greatest shipyards in the world, and I say that not only because it is the fourth largest shipyard in the world, but because of the diversity of what it produces, from warships to luxury craft to cruise lines to merchant vessels of every type. So it is really an incredible operation, and we're delighted to welcome Mr. Galbiati to the stage. Marco.
Good morning to everybody, and thank you for inviting me here today to participate on this panel. So I will start with the word, sea power. Sea power is a term that we use to describe the relationship between human life, commerce, and communications. For centuries, sea power remains directly related to a nation's competitive power and relative wealth or prosperity. At Fincantieri, we understand this relationship between power and prosperity from a historical perspective. I should define these terms. Power is the ability for a nation to influence another to submit or change to their interests, while prosperity is more than money and gold. It is the ability to gather and focus resources to a strategic end. When Greece and then Rome went to sea, they quickly realized their growing prosperity and power were fundamentally linked to their use of the maritime domain. The initial globe trading system established by Rome in the Mediterranean Sea served as a blueprint for today's modern international trading system. Far away, resources became more easily accessible, as Portugal opened the Indian spice trade. Then Spain gathered gold and silver from Central and South America, and then Dutch and English gathered more raw resources from North America and China. The foundation of modern trade were laid and then built upon, resulting in the tremendous growth as a result of rather modest investments. This continued and then accelerated when we shifted from sail to steam and then to diesel propulsion. It is our position that this investment will continue as we move forward, incorporating emerging technologies and advanced materials to bring the future on board. Fincantieri is engaged in pretty much every aspect of the blue economy. We built warships that provide security upon, below, and above the seas. Our designs are recognized as some of the best in the world, and our ships are also exported to allies and partner nations. Of course, the Italian Navy remains our most important customer and partner. Fincantieri engineers and naval architects, some of the brightest minds in the world, are on the forefront, optimizing the opportunity to maximize ship effectiveness as the world Navy shifts from traditional manned warship to new unmanned vessels that can operate in a variety of ways. Maximizing is part of our DNA. On the commercial side, we build ships, cruise ships and yachts, which allow people to travel the planet in a manner of their choosing. Because mankind is only just now beginning to explore and utilize resources from the ocean depths and the polar regions, Fincantieri has positioned itself as a market leader in offshore support vessels and drilling ships, including submersibles to support operation at the ocean floor. Lastly, we remain interested in opening, exploring, and developing the Arctic region through the use of icebreakers and offshore platforms tailored for the condition of the high latitudes. And we're deeply invested both philosophically and practically in sustainable ocean activities. We are solidly positioned as a leader in research, development, and construction of vessels needed to establish and maintain offshore wind farms. One of these vessels is now under construction also in our shipyard in Wisconsin, United States. Additionally, we have invested in advanced hydrogen-powered vessels and recently committed to building 2 luxury vessels, Explorer 5 and Explorer 6, to help reach a global goal of net zero carbon emission by 2050. We are proud to say that by 2035, Fincantieri will have designed the first zero-emission ship. And if cycle history continues, we may find ourselves integrating with propulsion back to the hydrogen design. The system of trade that was built 2,000 years ago by Rome has now been transported to the entire globe. And Fincantieri is here to see that the process continues to advance in terms of scale and sustainability. I believe that the influence of power is best used to better humankind and to strengthen our global communities. Having sustainable and secure seas remain critically important to this endeavor as well as for our collective prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I loved hearing both about maximizing and minimizing at the same time. Minimizing emissions to maximize the efficiency and effectiveness of the maritime sector. Thank you so much. It's now my great pleasure to introduce the person on this panel with the shortest commute, Mr. Terry Timonen, who is based here in the Port of Los Angeles and is the CEO of AltaSea. AltaSea is a nonprofit that is working on sustainability and solving some of the most critically challenging problems in our maritime sector. So, Mr. Terry Timonen, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Ian, and welcome to all of you on behalf of AltaSea and the Port of Los Angeles. I feel I can welcome you here because our facility is right across the water from the Amerigo Vespucci, which is indeed the most beautiful vessel in the world. Thank you for bringing her here, yes. So as you heard, AltaSea is a nonprofit that is celebrating its 10th anniversary. And after this panel, we'd be happy to answer more questions, but I'm not alone. I want to introduce my team that's here today as well. Our founder, Jenny Crusoe, please wave. Robin Aubie, who's also been with us all of the 10 years right there, and Michelle Raymond. And they can tell you a lot more about AltaSea as well. So what is AltaSea and what is the blue economy? We have this 110-year-old facility right across the water from you, these historic warehouses. And by the way, I know if you come from Rome and you say it's a 110-year-old building, that's just a baby. But for us, that's old and historic. And we have now spent the last several years renovating this 240,000 square feet of historic warehouses into a blue economy campus. And what that means to us is the blue economy harnesses regenerative aquaculture. You heard how much the world depends on the ocean today for food. It will increasingly depend on the ocean for food, especially if we grow it and harvest it sustainably. Things like kelp and other algae that can grow as much as 2 feet a day and can provide us with food and fuel and pharmaceuticals and fertilizers, food for animals and so forth, that is much more sustainable than what we grow on land. There's also great innovation for how to harness that on land, in warehouses, as well as in the open ocean. We also focus on renewable energy from the ocean. So for example, wave and tidal energy. A lot of focus, of course, around the world has been to decarbonize our energy sector with solar panels, which we have on our rooftop over there if you look across the water, and of course with wind power. But the endless energy of the waves and the moving water can provide us with another source of limitless, clean, renewable energy and ways to store it without batteries. If you come over to AltaSea, we'll show you how to store that intermittent renewable energy without batteries. We also work in that sector of renewable energy on decarbonizing, because I think most people understand that we can't just do less bad, mitigate our way out of the climate crisis. We're going to have to pull back some of that carbon pollution we've already put into the atmosphere, and about a third of that has been absorbed by our oceans, as you heard earlier, turning it more acidic and obviously with the warming ocean much more hostile to life. We need to pull back that pollution, and we can do that. 3 universities at AltaSea are now demonstrating how to take carbon out of the ocean much more effectively than taking it out of the air. And the byproduct of one of those great experiments is green hydrogen production, so that we can actually have that hydrogen to decarbonize the maritime economy, and we're working on that sector as well right here in the Port of Los Angeles to show how all of the container handling equipment, the goods movement, the cold ironing that's necessary for ships can all be done with clean green hydrogen. And the last sector that we focus on in the blue economy is what we call blue technology. So underwater drones, robotics, sensors, mapping. The great Bob Ballard, who found the Titanic, as well as many other great scientific discoveries, has a workshop at AltaSea and teaches that to young people and helps them build their own underwater drones, many of which might still be at the bottom of the San Pedro Channel, but many of which go on to great careers. And that's another part of what AltaSea is here for, is education. We bring thousands of school kids to AltaSea every year in the greatest field trip in the country so that they can actually hands-on build and operate their own underwater drone or harvest kelp from the ocean and understand that in fact it's an ingredient in the toothpaste they used that very morning and nobody knew it. And all of the other exciting things that come from the ocean, and become better consumers and voters and much more aware in the future about how we are an ocean planet. We also hope that some of those young people will go into the blue economy. So we have a workforce training program with 13 community colleges, certificate programs in things like aquaculture and underwater robotics and maritime energy, things like hydrogen and other ways to decarbonize that sector. So the blue economy is thriving at AltaSea. We invite you to come over and take a look. As I said, it's a 110-year-old historic building, which if you're from Italy might not look that old, but today she's had a facelift and is now embracing all of these blue economy workers and educators and innovators. I want to leave you with some thoughts. I had the great honor and pleasure 20-some years ago of meeting the great Jacques Cousteau, and I asked him, what inspired you to make your life all about the ocean? And he said, because it's in our soul. He said, our brains live on land, but our soul still lives in the ocean. He said, we are the same thing as the ocean. We share, our biology shares more in common with the gray whales that migrate along the Pacific a few miles from here than any other living things on Earth. Our bodies are salt water, essentially. He said, we've lost that knowledge. We've forgotten that we come from the sea and we depend on the sea. And he said, it's up to us, to this generation, to merge the brain and the soul once again, to bring the soul from the ocean to our everyday life. And that's what I think all of you are doing by being here. So let me just end by saying, mille grazie. And as the great Neapolitan folk song, Torna Sorrento, begins with, Vide mare quante bello. The only way we will have a sustainable future and beat the climate crisis is if we realize that that bella ocean is the thing that makes life possible and that we must depend on, we must preserve and used sustainably. And you are all helping us on that journey. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that beautiful anecdote and really that inspiration. I have to say, I have 5 degrees. I'm grossly overeducated, never wanted to go back to school, but now I want to go back to school to come on your field trip because it sounds absolutely amazing. In terms of finding your soul at sea, I think I really resonate with that and can relate to it, so thank you. I'm now delighted to introduce Mr. Salvatore D'Amico, who's the Fleet Director of D'Amico Shipping, but also is the director of Confitarma and the youth leadership program within that. That Young Shipowners Association is part of what I want to hear from you about today. I'm looking forward to that because as we're hearing, we have to inspire the future generations, and we really look forward to hearing what you have to say about that. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. So first of all, I would like to say good morning to our Chief of Staff, to all my friends of the Italian Navy, and to His Honorable Mr. Valentini, Deputy Minister, all other extinguished guests, and in particular all other authorities. I want to thank the Italian Navy for this incredible initiative here in Los Angeles. I feel particularly proud of being Italian and seeing the Amerigo Vespucci here in Los Angeles. Grazie. This ship is very special for me. I met my wife when she was 14, and when she was 18, or actually 17, I think, she has spent about 20 days on board of this vessel, thanks to the Lega Navale Italiana, as a civil cadet. So for me, this ship is very special because I always heard speaking about it, and my wife always told me, you will never get the opportunity to go on board. And I had the opportunity to be on board and actually to visit the quarters of the captain, which for sure she has never visited. So this makes me even more happy. Now, in order to better explain about what I'm going to tell you today, I want to give you a brief introduction about my company. The D'Amico Group is a company that owns about 50 vessels. We operate more than 100 vessels. And we technically manage 80 vessels. I am in charge of running those 80 vessels, so our own and those people that entrust me to run their own vessel. I'm in charge of the safety of the vessel, the security of the vessel, the safety of the crew on board, and the technical part. Obviously, I have plenty of directors and managers reporting to me in my team. My team ashore is more than 200 people. As a company, we have invested 1.3 billion about 7 years ago in renovating our fleet in order to have the most efficient and the greenest fleet worldwide. And we have one of the lowest average age of fleet around the world. But in terms of what is necessary for the environment, we still feel that that was not enough. And the reason why I want to put this in perspective is because being head of the Italian Shipowner Association, I think that for me, being the owner who has the youngest fleet, is quite easy to say, I have done my part already, so I don't need to do anything else. But that is not the case. As a matter of fact, we are continuing to invest every single day to make that vessel efficient and to keep them as efficient as new, which not only means to invest money in their maintenance, not only means to invest money in the people on board of the ship, because you need to train them correctly so that they are able to use the vessel at the maximum efficiency, but also to continue to upgrade the vessel. A little bit what the Italian Navy did with the Cavour, what the Italian Navy did with the Amerigo Vespucci and with all the other vessels. As a matter of fact, in the last 2 years, with all the investment that we have done, we have now one net zero vessel of those 50 vessels, which means that basically one vessel is not emitting CO2 because it's offset by all the retrofit that we have done. And within the next 12 months, we will have the second vessel, which will be net zero, thanks to all the upgrade that we are doing. And this is money that we are putting on the table. But it's not only about D'Amico. All the Italian ship owners are doing the same kind of investment and the same kind of choices. That said, we never have to forget that shipping is responsible for only 3% of the world CO2 net emission. And why am I saying this? Because if we look, for example, at green energy to create a green fuel for our industry, you need to keep in mind that to offset the 3%, the actual green energy all around the world would not be enough. So if you take all the solar panel, all the wind farms and so on, that would not be enough to build the energy which is needed to fuel our vessel. But at the same time, which are responsible for 3%. But at the same time, you can use the same amount of energy to offset the 18% of CO2 emission generated by carbon, by coal electric powers. Now, going to talk a little bit more about easier things, I think that we need today to focus a lot in order to maintain the shipping as a sustainable business on what are the challenges that we as ship owners are facing every single day. Our challenges are the same that risk to impact on the world trades. And as a matter of fact, if shipping stops, as everyone has already said, this is going to have an impact. There is a famous popular sentence which is saying, without shipping, half of the world would starve of food and the other half would die of cold. It's a matter of fact. We cannot live without shipping. That said, we need global regulations. We need a stronger country, and I want to take this opportunity because I understood that also the political class is here, a stronger country at IMO. More Italy at IMO is what is needed in order to have a better aligned position of the Mediterranean countries at IMO level. Because priorities are different, and there is nothing wrong. But even inside the EU, there are different priorities. Because when you are a small ship owner doing coastal trade, you have different priorities to the one that are doing international trades. And typically Mediterranean ship owners like Greeks, Italians, and Spanish are mainly employed in international trades, while Northern European ship owners are mainly used to do local trades. International regulation, IMO needs to gain a leader in doing regulation. It needs to be a little bit more aggressive. I'm not saying that there is nothing wrong in imposing a tax on the EU, like the EU ETS in terms of emission. And I will make you an example. If the tax is global, there are no problems. But as a matter of fact, when the regulation and when the taxes are local, and when the regulations are regional regulation, they only risk to jeopardize our business. Now, regulation is one problem, but we have also another big problem, and that is security. I've heard today speaking about maritime security. I have heard about cyber risk. And both these risks are in common with us. I will never stress enough how much I need to thank the Italian Navy, which are protecting our vessel on a daily basis when we cross the Indian Ocean. They have gone well beyond what we could have asked them. And I went desperately, almost crying, to Chinknav to obtain one vessel. We didn't obtain one vessel, we obtained two. Thank you. Another story is the cyber risk. On the cyber risk, we risk to fall beyond when it comes to commercial vessels. There needs to be more collaboration between the stakeholders, the government, and the shipping companies. Not in a dialogue where there is the vendor which is going to the shipping company, but in a dialogue where we are all around the same table. Because we need to find solutions which are economically viable for us. Because bottom line, in order to operate, we need to remain profitable. There is one asset that I always think is the most important one, but I never people talk about. And this is the crew. Allora, it's very nice to see inside this room the cadets of the Vespucci. I don't have military cadets on board of my vessel. I have civil cadets. We finance, as a company, we finance a school from where cadets are coming out every day. And yesterday I was talking to Admiral Natal about the possibility to do something together, because I think that a lot can be done over there. But the truth is that we need to inspire the young generation in order for them to join the vessel. I don't want to hear people saying, we are providing internet, we don't understand why they don't come. Internet, for us, is the minimum. It's not a matter of salary. You cannot attract people by saying, when you will be a master, you will earn 18,000 euro per month. That is not the case. In order to attract people, you need to give them a safe working environment. And the best way to give them a safe working environment is thanks to the help of the Italian Navy. It's a matter of fact, and this, I'm sorry that I need to stress this point even more, but it's a matter of fact that our seafarers are not military cadets. They are not on board to protect the vessel. They are on board to transport cargo. They are on board to conduct a ship from A to B. On board of our vessel, we have 20, 22, 24, 25 crew members. They are not entitled to use any weapons. We don't carry weapons on board of our vessel. Without the Italian Navy, we couldn't pass through the Suez Canal. It's only thanks to the Italian Navy that we can do this. So, bravo. Obviously, to convince the young people to come inside to join this fantastic business of the military navy or the commercial vessel, we need to do more. Italy is surrounded by the seas, but at the same time, little attention is given by this. There is an incredible project which has been started by the Italian Navy, which is called Lupa Marina, which we were very happy to sponsor as a company, because we strongly believe that bringing inside the elementary school the culture of the sea is very important and is a very good starting point for allowing people to choose the right direction when it comes to the sea. Last but not least, I want to say to the political class that Confitarma's ship owners, and Amico as well, being a member of Confitarma, we are ready to support with investment whatever ship is necessary to build strategic assets for our countries, like cable layers, wind farm maintenance vessel, and so on. You only need to come to us, and we will be happy to respond to your request by building whatever you need, because this is where the government and the private need to work together. Before closing, I think that I have said this many, many times, but for me this is too important. I wish to thank the Italian Navy for making all our sea pattern safe and maintaining the safe life of our seafarers. Thank you.
Dr. D'Amico, thank you so much. That was absolutely outstanding, and I think a very rich presentation in terms of the different points it made. I am, for my sins, a maritime lawyer by background, and one of the things that I often talk about are the fundamental principles of maritime law. There are three: the freedom of navigation, which we've heard about today, the safety of life at sea and the preservation of human life being the #1 priority in all cases, whether you are in peacetime or wartime. And number three, the uniformity principle, which allows us to work all over the world with some degree of consistency in how we expect ports and maritime services to operate. If you leave the port of Los Angeles and you arrive in the port of Singapore, you have a reasonable expectation of exactly how it's going to work. And so your point about regulations was incredibly important, because when we start making regulation by piecemeal, no matter how helpful we think those regulations might be to preserve our future, we potentially create new challenges that disrupt maritime commerce, undermine the freedom of navigation, and in some cases may diminish the ability to preserve human life at sea in a safe and functional way. And so all three of those principles are important, and we have to work together as a community to realize them collectively. So thank you for that. Now, finally, our last speaker is from the Ministry of Made in Italy, Dr. Alberto Castronovo, who will tell us a little bit about what the ministry is doing in the blue economy. So, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Very glad to be here today. And of course, the tour of the Amerigo Vespucci ship offers a unique opportunity to showcase the excellence of Made in Italy. This magnificent vessel epitomizes the centuries-old expertise of the Italian shipbuilding industry. The Italian Navy proudly bears the coats of arms of the four maritime republics, which in medieval times were beacons of commercial and cultural development. These historical legacies remind us that Italy as a whole is a true maritime republic. Our seas should no longer be seen as sources of problems, but as opportunities of economic and social growth. From its inception, this government has prioritized the sea in its agenda. The Ministry of Enterprises and Made in Italy recognizes the historical heritage and the opportunities presented by Italy's strategic location and at the heart of the Mediterranean, a sea once known to the Romans as Mare Nostrum. Moreover, our efforts towards a digital and green transition must consider the sea as a crucial strategic resource. The maritime economy contributes approximately for 150 billion in added value, with over 7,000 kilometers of coastline. These statistics are vital for our economy development. Therefore, the sea must be central to Italy's new industrial policy, increasingly linking frontier technologies with the blue economy. Italy is a global leader in the shipbuilding sector, particularly in constructing large cruise ships and yachts. Our excellence also extends to marine robotics, blue biotechnology, marine renewable energy, and sustainable technologies for exploiting marine resources. The Italian government supports deep-sea mining, provided it is environmentally compatible. The extraction of minerals and metals from the seabed will be part of a new framework law on the underwater dimension, expected to be presented by summer this year. Additionally, the forthcoming law on the blue economy will encompass all business that operate from and with the sea. Following the Sea Plan approved by the Interministerial Committee for Sea Policies, the government aims to strengthen offshore mining, positioning Italy as a leader in this field. This initiative will leverage the strengths of our national mining industry, particularly giants like Saipem and Fincantieri, as well as key players in electronics like STM Microelectronics, logistics as Alice, and defense as Leonardo. The Sea Plan for 23-25 includes a focus on exploitation of underwater mineral resources. Italy plans to evaluate the potential of adopting legislation for these activities, ensuring minimal impact on marine ecosystem through a precautionary approach. We intend to support scientific research to verify the environmental impact and promote sustainable technologies, ensuring compliance with international standards and protecting the underwater environment. The oil and gas sector in Italy, equipped with the necessary technology and economic capacity, is pivotal for seabed mining, given the high costs involved. This sector has driven the development of unmanned systems, enhancing safety and maintenance of offshore infrastructure. Key areas for maritime mining include the Ligurian Sea, the Tyrrhenian Sea, and parts of the Strait of Sicily. Notably, critical raw materials, the so-called CRM, are concentrated near underwater volcanic regions. The defense industry also values these resources essential for military applications, ranging from traditional metals to advanced materials like lithiums for drones. Exclusive economic zones, EEZ, established by law number 91 in 2021, extend up to 200 miles from the coastline, granting the coastal state exclusive sovereign rights over maritime resource management. The government aims to establish Italy's EEZ even partially by 2024, potentially expanding seabed mining activities significantly. We also highlight the Sustainable Blue Economy Partnership co-founded by the Horizon European Programme, which supports research and innovation for a resilient and sustainable blue economy, focusing on protecting marine biodiversity and resources. The law on Made in Italy of December 2023, simplifying the nautical supply chain and promoting the replacement of fossil fuel engines with electric ones, further demonstrate our dedication to sustainability. On the legislative front, the government is preparing the bill connected to financial law on the blue economy. This law, expected in autumn 2024, will improve the regulatory framework for many activities related to the blue economy, streamlining and simplifying interactions between business, public administration, and local authorities. By reducing the number of steps and the time needed to complete them, this simplification will help make marine sector's companies more competitive. Encouraging administrations to circulate the information they already possess is a vital mechanism for enhancing the competitiveness of the maritime industry. A crucial aspect of developing sustainable ocean economies is the role of critical raw materials. These materials are essential for advancing technologies that drive the blue economy, from the production of renewable energy systems such as wind turbines and solar panels to the development of the advanced marine robotics and biotechnologies, CRMs are fundamental. The sustainable extraction and management of these resources will not only support technological advancement, but also ensure the long-term health of our ocean ecosystems. Italy's strategic focus on CRMs is vital for several reasons. First, the demand for this material is increasing globally, driven by the transition to greener technologies. By securing a reliable supply of CRMs, Italy can maintain its leadership in the shipbuilding and marine technology sector. Second, the responsible extraction of CRMs from our seabeds can set a global standard for environment stewardship, balancing economic growth with ecological protection. In conclusion, Italy must focus not only on Central Europe, but also on the Mediterranean as a vital area for growth and exchange with neighboring countries. Our prosperity is tied to a flourishing and peaceful Mediterranean. By centering our strategy on the sea, Italy can achieve sustainable growth reminiscent of the times of the Romans and of the maritime republics. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the formal speeches of our panel. And as the stage has changed for us to have more of a discussion, I want to just remind everyone what we've heard so far today. We started off with Admiral Fogo talking a bit about the importance of relationships in security. We cannot secure the global maritime domain if we do not work together. And I think he really brought home the importance of the message that the chief of the Italian Navy and he go back many years, and that relationship has led to a closer partnership between the US and Italy, and wider even beyond that, to help secure the waters, encourage freedom of navigation, protect seafarers, and work together to ensure that maritime commerce, fisheries, and all the good activities on the water are not impeded by the bad. We then heard from Mr. Lino Buono about the incredible advances in artificial intelligence. It was really, I think, quite striking to see the demonstration. And I think one of the points you really raised was that there is no development without security. And we have to recognize that no matter how we are innovating in terms of the new space, we need to be thinking about securing what we have. So that was a really inspiring presentation, and as I said before, quite terrifying. We also then heard a lot more about the concept of maximizing what we have, at the same time innovating with something new. And I think Mr. Galbiati really emphasized that there's an opportunity to come up with new ways of using old technology and making it more fresh, more interesting, more relevant to today, while also pursuing not only new technology, but new routes, new areas of exploration. And that exploration piece, particularly as we sit in the shadow of a ship that is evocative of the age of exploration, that we remember that the seas are rather unexplored. And so we need to keep that inspiration to keep looking out for what's new, what's possible. We then heard about some of the incredible opportunities for solving problems, even with some of the problems we have. We'd heard earlier about the problem of sargassum seaweed and the increased blooms from the phosphates used in agriculture. We then also heard about how seaweed could be used to solve other problems that we have. And so how do we take what we're working with and make the most of it? And I think the inspiration of what Alta Sea is doing should rest with all of us. And I'm looking forward to trying to schedule a visit. We then heard from Dr. D'Amico about a lot of different areas of critical concern. But one of the points that he made really strongly is that the political class, the decision makers who form regulations, who make policy, who make laws, need to be working in tandem with those to whom those laws apply. If there is not a relationship between the private sector and those who are regulating the private sector, we run the risk of creating challenges that do not need to hamper our ability to have global shipping flow freely. I had said at the beginning, no shipping, no shopping, and that is true no matter where we are in the world. And if we start to encumber that with regulations or good ideas about how to solve one problem, we can create new problems that may be even far worse. And as you stated, 50% of the world would starve to death and the other 50% would freeze to death if we do not ensure that maritime commerce can continue to flow. And finally, we heard from Dr. Castronovo about the incredible advances in the use of the critical raw materials in the maritime space. I remember as just a few years back really recognizing that lithium, something I'd heard about as a child but hadn't really paid any attention to as being something of significance, had risen to be one of the most critical minerals in the world because of its use in batteries. And that increase in reliance on critical rare earth minerals or even just critical raw materials means that we probably have not figured out just how much we could do with what sits on the seabed today. And that goes to the point I made at the outset about wealth blindness. And so today's talks have all helped us to, I think, start that process. Please join me now on stage so that we can continue that process with a little bit of a discussion. So please, all the panelists, come on up. And for all of you in the audience, please, particularly the youth among you, think about questions you might like to ask this incredible group. And I'll start off with a question that I want to emphasize, which I think kind of touched on all of the presentations. But we are talking about innovation. We're talking about new ways of doing things. We're talking about taking the old and making it relevant. How do we make sure that we are not overlooking security in our process to innovate? Because there's a chance and a danger that no matter what we do that is new, we'll actually open the door to new problems as well as new opportunities. Drones, for example, we've seen some flying overhead the last couple of days. We've talked about the development of them. We've talked about their use in different situations. Can be both a great thing. They can provide supplies to ships as many as 5 miles out at sea or ship to ship between 5 miles. But they can also traffic drugs. They can also destroy ships. They can also kill people. And so how do we ensure that we are red teaming and thinking as an adversary sufficiently in order to make sure that when we create something new, we aren't creating both a new good thing and a new bad thing in tandem. So I open the floor to anyone who wants to kick us off. Mr. Buono?
So, okay, it's an hard question, basically, but it's true. So I think that I can say that we need to think about security by design. Security by design is mandatory. And this is true especially when the technology is impactful. The more the technology is impactful, the more security is needed. If we think, for example, at a simple knife, it's a good tool when you are dining, but it can be a bad tool in the hand of bad guys, of course. Thinking about guns, it's the same. It's a good tool in the hand of police, but it's a bad tool in the hand of bad guys. But guns are worse than knife. Why? Because they are more impactful and they can be used from a bigger distance. In the same way, if we think about, for example, autonomous vehicle, so it's good to have AI inside vehicle because for sure it will reduce the car accidents. But if there is a lack of security and someone from remote is able to interfere with the normal behavior of the car, we can create a high damage. And the bigger is the vehicle, the bigger is the problem.
That's fantastic. Does anyone else want to comment on that, particularly those who have already spoken about security a bit? Yeah? No? Yeah, Admiral Fogo, sir.
So, I mentioned earlier that Admiral DeGiorgi asked if I would help him with a frigate, and that was the USS Simpson. She was the last frigate in the United States Navy. We decommissioned her. And shortly after we did this engagement with the Italian Navy and extended their reach, he invited me to Rome. He showed me the design. It was actually a model on his coffee table of Fregata European Multimissione, or the FREM. And I didn't think I would be sitting here today with the CEO of Fincantieri Marine Group, U.S., a huge investment in infrastructure in the United States, building the next class of frigate. The luxury that we have in building the U.S. version of the Italian FREM, and of course Americans have, we have to add all these extra things on and 50 tons of weight. It's a nightmare for the shipbuilder. We're going to get her done. I was there for the keel laying of the Constellation. Is that you have the opportunity to embed new technologies in that ship from the keel up. I was very impressed with your presentation. I know your CEO is here, of some of the non-kinetic measures that are being taken against our warships and could be taken by our warships. So there's a tremendous opportunity here to do what we in the United States call spiral development. And as we commission each additional hull of the frigate, we can make it hardened to cyber attack. And that's something that's very difficult to do when you have a design like the Arleigh Burke. But we've got a whole new design that we can play with, and I think that's valuable. The other thing is that ship comes with something called conditions-based maintenance, which means Americans want to go tear pumps out of ships well before they're due to fail. The Italians actually monitor the equipment on board, any kind of rotating equipment or electronic equipment, and the ship, it's like a BMW, will tell you when it's time to go in for maintenance so you don't waste a lot of time. It means, our CNO, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, Italiana, by the way, she says, I want more players on the field, and that's how you get it. So your point's well taken, and I think we have an opportunity now to do something about it.
Well, and somewhat in that sort of spirit of red teaming and bringing different viewpoints to bear, I think all of you have spoken in one way or another about the importance of relationships across different segments of the maritime world. How, as a practical matter, do you suggest we actually pursue some of the relationships that are needed to make sure that what we're doing in one space isn't going to negatively impact another? How do we make sure that we are engaging with the industry, engaging with the Navy, engaging with the shipbuilders, engaging with those who are focused on environmental innovation, and engaging with the cyberspace in a way that makes everybody work together in a coordinated fashion rather than at odds with each other? How do we do it?
So as a ship owner, for me, it's a little bit easier. First of all, there is one big problem. Ship owner, by traditional, have a strong ego. So the first thing that a ship owner has to do is to leave the ego at home. And this would already sort out at least 50% of the problem. The second problem, obviously, is an economic one. Because I don't think that there is any ministry or there is any forces or there is any ship owner who is against having a permanent representative, for example, of Italy at the IMO, with a proper staff, in a proper staffed way. as it happened with several governments in North Europe, that they even have 4 or 5 people in London seated over there just for the IMO. But the problem is always the same, is economic priorities. So, unfortunately, they are limited. We need to use it in the right way. And if you ask me, do you prefer to have the permanent representative at the IMO, or do you prefer to have your vessel? Obviously, the costs are completely different. Or you prefer to have a FREM frigate escorting your vessel in the Red Sea? I would say I prefer the FREM, because for me that is my priority now. But at the same time, we need to engage with the political class in such a way to make things possible. In Italy, to a certain extent, is illegal, but I think that entrepreneur needs to find the right way to finance certain business by the government when the government cannot reach that position. Because it is in the interest of the community to do things in the right way. Something which I have not heard about this morning, but when I was talking about regulations and so on, is that, for example, the European ETS and the Fuel EU risk to cut out Europe from international trades. And this is going to be a giant disaster. Imagine that we estimate that for a refrigerator, the extra cost on one single refrigerator arriving from China might be in excess of 30 euro. This is obviously on top of all the extra costs that are already over there because of, obviously, we have a lot of limitation for the import and so on. On each pair of shoes, there will be 35 cents of extra cost. There will be also a limited amount of export going out of Europe because of the extra cost, because vessels are supposed to pay when they get in and when they get out of Europe. So, you know, this is going to affect us in a very, very bad way. And bottom line, we are going to collect money from ships coming to Europe. But is this going to benefit Europe to an extent? No. So what is the right way? Let's impose a tax, a global tax on CO2, which affects every ship trading around the world. That would be effective. But in order to do so, we need to go at IMO, and we need to be very, very tough in this respect. Even, I will make an extra example, Mediterranean Sea. In the Mediterranean Sea, we are failing to do a common interest coalition. Now, from next year, Mediterranean Sea will become, you will be obliged to burn MGO on any vessel. But what if we force any ship sailing in the Mediterranean Sea, with all the exception, military vessel obviously will not be, to not sail faster than 10 knots? We would save plenty of bunker, and this would obviously benefit the environment in a tremendous way. But we are lacking again to make a common politics.
Well, I think you've answered my question both in form and substance, because you've given us a bit of an answer, but also this forum itself is part of that answer. Having events like this where we can actually hear from each other is critically important, and this is an unusual amount of diversity in a panel to be able to hear from those views. Does anyone else want to speak to that before I turn to the floor? Admiral.
Hey, but you talk about relationships, Ian, and how we can battle some of these problems, not just the blue economy, but security. And as you look at what's happening out in the Pacific, or actually broadly across the world, we're seeing authoritarian regimes that are challenging the post-Bretton Woods concepts post-World War II. So norms, standards, institutions that have served us well and prevented war and even nuclear war are being challenged by Iran, by North Korea, the Axis of Resistance, the Houthis. Italy has a ship with the Americans. Italy is in charge of Prosperity Guardian. I laud you for that. It's very dangerous down there. And Russia and China. This is not just about the Ukraine. It's everywhere in the world. If you look at what's happening out in the Pacific and the encroachment on some economic zones and territorial waters, I think what's happening in Second Thomas Shoal to the Philippines is outrageous. Furthermore, the Chinese distant water fishing fleet is doing what you and I studied and seminared about for 6 months: illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, not just in the Pacific, but in the Gulf of Guinea. And so in these interrelated things and crimes that are occurring around the world, we've got to work together. Because what happens in the Gulf of Guinea when all the fish goes away? Africans can no longer eat. the economies in several of those countries, former colonial countries, fail. And what do? They migrate north through the traffickers, come across the Mediterranean, which Admiral Credendino did his best to try to stem the tide of, and it puts incredible pressure on Europe. So by working together and by having Cavour out here in the Pacific to show solidarity with the Americans, it's not just us standing up and saying, this is wrong. We now have a close ally and a partner, and so thank you very much for that.
Thank you. I want to turn to the floor now and give the first question to the lady here. So if there's a microphone. Here we are.
Thank you. Is it on? My name is Luisa Del Giudice, and I am a scholar of Italian migration, so the Italian diaspora, which is a historic blue economy, of course, and especially in this area where so many Italians were in the fishing industry, Sicilians, Ischitani, etc. So this entire panel has avoided the issue of migration. You've only touched, not to the satisfaction of someone like me. So the only thing I heard of was the negative impact of trafficking, but I have not heard much about the positive aspects of human resources. So I understand this is the Marina Militare and you're involved with defense, but could someone say something about the movement of peoples around, not as a problem, but as a positive resource?
I turn to the panel.
This may not be exactly what you were thinking, but when I was 12 years old, my family moved to Australia from the United States. We went on a ship. We stopped in numerous ports on the way. It was my first experience with the ocean and certainly with other ports. And as migrants to another country, I went to high school there. I then went to Europe on a ship that stopped in many other ports, going all the way around the rest of the way around the world from where I had started. Ended up in Europe, working several jobs, earning money to come back to the States to go to college. Came back on a ship. In those days, airplane travel was very expensive, and you would go as a passenger on a ship. But I learned so much about the world and about other people and what binds us together rather than what separates us as a migrant. And so today, I think part of this, as you point out, is not to just vilify migrants, but to recognize the value that they bring. Look right around you here in San Pedro, the value that we've gained from Italians, Croatians, others that populate this area and have taught us a lot about fishing, about boats, maritime economy, and so forth. I couldn't be where I was today. I served in the Schwarzenegger administration here in California. Could not have done the work I did in his cabinet without that global experience. So in some ways, all of us are migrants, and it's important to understand that.
Yeah, thank you. This is a very interesting question. Thank you so much, because Italian government is deeply involved in trying to support and accompany this phenomenon that we are facing, the migration phenomenon that we are facing in this period. And Mediterranean is the sea where this happens. So we are now working very deeply on the so-called Mattei plan, which is a new approach of partnership with the African continent, trying to create partnerships and supporting Italian development in the African continent, with the main goal to stabilize these countries in order to give stability to their population and trying to avoid and control this immigrants flows through the Mediterranean.
I want to add something on this very delicate topic, which I think is very important to share. Besides the fact that shipping, obviously, as an industry, is creating plenty of jobs all around the world, and it's a matter of fact that shipping today employs a lot of people coming from what, let's say, the community likes to call third part of the world countries, like Indians, Filipinos, and so on. In our experience, we have started in the last 5 years to employ also Liberians, but before doing that, we decided to finance an academy in Liberia, because we don't think that it is the right way is just to pull people. The right thing is to educate people and then allow them to come on board as officer, and this is what we are doing. But I want to tell you what the state of Italy did for that country. As you know, there has been never an interest of Italy in Liberia. That said, when I spoke about our project to the Italian Navy, they allowed the Liberian government to join a system which they called TRMN, Tango Romeo Mike November, which is basically a system all around the world that Italy has several countries enrolled in it, which allows to give some insight of the vessel penetrating certain areas around the world. How is this helping the local community in Liberia? In an incredible way. Because thanks to this system, the Liberian government is now able to ascertain when they know a vessel which is inside their waters, to check this vessel where it's coming from, and they only need to use the gas for their engine in those cases when this vessel is coming, for example, from China, to go and check, which means they can save bunker and they can avoid illegal fishing inside their territorial waters. And all this is possible thanks to the Italian government. If there was not the Italian government, they would not have this system.
Eloisa, thanks for the question. I'm very passionate about this. You and I talked at the break. First of all, I think migration is a good thing. It's become an extremely politically charged and divisive subject in America, particularly at the time of a presidential election. And that's because we haven't gone about it the right way. Migration is good when it is controlled. So all the people that are coming to this country have been coming to this country for hundreds of years. I mentioned Fiorella LaGuardia. The Italians that came through Ellis Island went into New York City with not much money in their pockets, and they built the skyscrapers of New York. Now, we can do that again if we allow legal migration into this country. I am an immigrant myself. I am a naturalized American citizen. I was lucky. Born in Germany, raised in Canada, came here in 1968. I got my papers in April of '77, and I was a midshipman in one of those uniforms at the Naval Academy 3 months later. I was lucky. Now, if you look at all the people that are coming into this country from all sorts of places and conflicts, and our Secretary of the Navy, Carlos Del Toro, who's a Cuban immigrant himself. He grew up in Hell's Kitchen in New York, not much in his pocket. He, too, went to the Naval Academy and bootstrapped himself up to be a successful businessman and now the secretary. He and I have talked about this, and I know he's talked to Mr. Galbiati about it. We should take some of this manpower and put it to work in our industrial base. There are a diaspora of Afghans in this country who are well-educated after the Afghan war. Ukrainians who are on special visas here, who are well-educated, mathematicians, industrialists, and put them to work in the shipyards. There tends to be a little resistance to that because it's not American, but it is the American way. It's how we built this country. I'm fully behind what you say, and I'd like to see a lot more done to put these hardworking people to work.
Talking about immigration, just I want to highlight that in the United States, one of the most important challenge that all the shipyards, all the companies are facing is to find the workforce to produce and to build the ships. We are in this condition in our shipyard in Wisconsin, so it's not my job to say what is the solution, but it's a big challenge. In Wisconsin, we're at 2.8% of unemployment rates. It's not the best place, probably, it's not Florida. It's not easy to relocate people from the south to the north. So the big challenge that all the shipbuilders in the United States are facing now is really to find the people to build these military ships that are so important for the country and for the United States. This is the big challenge that we're facing and will face in the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, thank you very much. I, like so many Americans, would not be here had it not been for migration by sea. And one of the things that I want to emphasize, going back to Vice Minister Valentini's speech at the beginning, is that the blue economy has some principles to it. And one of those principles is inclusiveness. And one of the things that we perhaps need to innovate more on is how we include the innovation, the ideas, the insights of those who have traverse the seas to find a better future. And I think they bring with them new ideas that we need to harness. And so to all of that, I think for the blue economy in particular, that's an incredibly important point. Now, we have exceeded our time, so I'm afraid that we have to cut this short. But I want to just emphasize how much we all appreciate, truly, from the bottom of our hearts, the Italian Navy, not only for bringing the most beautiful ship in the world to our shores, but for putting on this event and giving us the opportunity to share across different aspects of the maritime world and to form new relationships. And I thank all of you for being a fantastic audience. I thank all the panelists for bringing fantastic insights and ideas to this discussion. And I thank Admiral Natale and Vice Minister Valentini, and of course, the Chief of Navy for the convocation of this incredible event. So thank you all, and I look forward to continuing the discussion afterwards. Please join me in thanking the panelists.